Alright guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're diving into the Las Vegas Raiders Week 3 power rankings from ESPN. The Raiders moved up to number 21 after being ranked 28 last week. That's a pretty big jump, but honestly, it doesn't seem quite right to me. Sure, the Raiders lost to the Chargers in Week 1, but they controlled the first half before things fell apart. I had a feeling they'd bounce back, and it wouldn't have surprised me if they had beaten the Ravens in Baltimore. Remember, the Colts pulled off a win there last year, and the Raiders are a serious team. They've got a top-tier talent in Brock Bowers, who's already proving why he was a top 3 player in the draft. They lucked out when he fell to them because so many teams were focused on quarterbacks. Plus, there's Davante Adams, one of the best wide receivers of this decade. He's still performing at an elite level, showing no signs of slowing down. Let's not forget Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker. Plus, they picked up Michael Mayer in the second round last year, and they seem to really like him. The offensive line did pretty well against the Ravens, even though they allowed a few sacks and pressures. But when it mattered, they gave enough protection for their quarterback to find his playmakers. Now, the biggest issue for the Raiders right now is the running game. It's been rough, one of the worst in the league so far. 17 carries for 27 yards from Zamir White and 9 for 24? That's got to improve. If Josh Jacobs were still with the Raiders, we wouldn't be talking about a weak run game. But he's with the Packers now after free agency, which is a bummer because I always hoped Jacobs would finish his career as a Raider. I know a lot of you are big fans of Antonio Pierce, and I get it, but Madison struggled with just 4 carries for 1 yard. He did score a touchdown, though, when the Raiders were in shotgun and handed it to him at the goal line. That was a cool play. Last week, he had a receiving touchdown, so it's clear the team wants to get him involved. But, like we said earlier, the run game really needs to step up. Now let's talk about the defense, which has been the heart of this Raiders team. They kept Lamar Jackson to 247 passing yards. Sure, he had 45 rushing yards, but 25 of those came on that one big play near the end. Honestly, if Lamar had kept the ball and made one juke, he could have had a real shot at the end zone. I'm still not sure why he tried to pitch it back. The Raiders' defense was everywhere. Max Crosby had an amazing game. 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, and 6 tackles in total. Christian Wilkins also stood out with 4 solo tackles. That duo has been fantastic this season. They really put pressure on Lamar and made things difficult for him. The interception Lamar threw was a huge momentum shift since it led to a touchdown for the Raiders. One downside was when the Raiders went for it on 4th and 2 and didn't get it, which cost them 3 points. But I love the aggressiveness. When you're that close to the Ravens' territory, it makes sense to take the risk, especially with all the weapons the Raiders have. Unfortunately, Davante Adams was one-on-one, but the pass just didn't connect. Even though the Raiders were down by 10 at one point and had a rough interception, this game is going to be a big confidence boost. They fought hard, and it's the kind of game that helps build momentum for the rest of the season. A lot of people probably thought the Raiders were out of the game after that interception, but they kept fighting. They got the stops they needed, moved the ball, and in the end, their key players stepped up. Davante Adams, Brock Bowers, and Max Crosby were incredible. These guys made all the difference. You could argue that Brock Bowers is already the best tight end in football, and he's only played 2 games. I said it before the season started. Bowers is an elite player. He's a rare talent. In fact, my Colts tried to trade up to get him in the draft. We were willing to give up our 15th pick, a second-round pick, and a future first-rounder just to grab him. That's how much we valued him, and we weren't the only ones. But the Raiders got lucky, and Bowers fell to them. In this game, he went 9 for 98 yards, and he was just as impressive in Week 1 against the Chargers. Then there's Davante Adams, who had 9 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown. Adams was huge for the Raiders, making clutch catches that most receivers in the NFL wouldn't be able to pull off. His ability to run routes, get open, and read the defense is next level. It's a shame that Adams and Derek Carr didn't get to finish what they started. With Carr at quarterback, it looked like the Raiders were on the verge of a Super Bowl run, but the defense just wasn't strong enough back then. Now, the Raiders have Gardner Minshew, who they picked up in free agency on a 2-year deal. He got paid, and in this game, he delivered, going 30 of 38 for 276 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He did take 5 sacks, but I wouldn't put all of those on him. The protection wasn't great. The Ravens' defense made things tough for Minshew, but despite the pressure, he played well overall. Yeah, the offensive line had some rough moments, but they also gave Minshew just enough time to make some big plays. Let's not forget, The Ravens led the league in sacks last year, so we have to be realistic. They're going to make it tough for any offense. Credit to Minshew for handling the pressure. One big moment came after that interception, when Max Crosby went up to Minshew and told him, "I've got your back." That was a huge turning point. It's moments like that that show the strong culture the Raiders have. I'm a Colts fan, and while I love my team, I don't remember seeing that kind of support for Minshew last season when he had his struggles. Max Crosby is not only one of the best players in the league, but he's also an amazing teammate. There's a reason he's the logo for the Raiders channel I just started yesterday. Mad Max is the heart of this team. After that, Minshew caught fire in the second half. Looking at his numbers, who would have guessed? Through 2 weeks, he's completed 77.5% of his passes for 533 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and has a 95.6 passer rating. If he keeps playing like this, the Raiders can genuinely be Super Bowl contenders. I've been saying they're a sneaky Super Bowl pick this year, and I still stand by that. I see them as a 10-plus win team, with their weapons, defense, and Minshew leading the charge. He's not a superstar, but he led the Colts to 9 wins last year with a pretty average supporting cast. Special shout out to Daniel Carlson, who was clutch in this game. Big-time players make big-time plays, and the Raiders have plenty of stars: Adams, Bowers, Crosby. These guys showed up when it mattered most, and that's what wins games at the highest level. Looking ahead, I really like the Raiders' schedule. They've got home games against the Carolina Panthers and Cleveland Browns, both winnable games, especially given how shaky those teams have looked offensively. Then they go to Denver to face the Broncos, and I think the Raiders' defense is on par with Pittsburgh's, and they have a better offense, so they should win that one too. After that, they have a home game against Pittsburgh, a road game against the Rams, and then matchups against Kansas City and Cincinnati. Aside from Kansas City and Cincinnati, I think the Raiders have a great shot in all of those games. And honestly, I'll even take the Raiders at home against the Chiefs. I know Mahomes has that one circled on his calendar, but the Raiders just seem to have the Chiefs' number sometimes, especially on defense. I think the Raiders win at least one of those two matchups. So yeah, I love the Raiders' chances in their next 5 games. They've got momentum, and the schedule works in their favor.